She's alive! Black Kid says at grave, what the millionaire finds changes everything. The wind moved through Eastwood Cemetery like a memory it couldn't forget, cold, restless, and filled with whispers. The late November sky was a washed-out grey, and fallen leaves skittered across the cracked paths like they had somewhere to be. At the far edge of the graveyard, where the plots were less polished and more forgotten, a little black boy knelt alone in front of a freshly packed grave. His name was Jalen Carter, and he was 6 years old. His hoodie was too big and hung off his thin frame like borrowed courage. One hand clutched the frayed strap of a backpack, the other pressed firmly against the earth. His lips barely moved, but the words that escaped were sharp, deliberate, and carried a weight that didn't belong to someone his age. "She's still alive," he whispered. He wasn't crying. He didn't scream or throw himself across the grass like some adults might expect of a child in mourning. He just listened, as if the dirt would respond if he stayed still long enough. His eyes, round and dark, stared so intently that he didn't notice the man watching him from across the hill. Gabriel Monroe had come to the cemetery out of obligation. Every November, he brought a single white rose to lay at the base of his brother's headstone. It was routine, quiet, and private. That's how he liked it. A tech mogul turned reluctant philanthropist, Gabriel didn't deal in emotions, he dealt in logic, data, and silence. But something about this boy, alone, kneeling, whispering to the dead, stopped him cold. At first, Gabriel told himself not to interfere. He wasn't good at people. He never had been. But when he turned to leave, the boy's voice carried again, louder this time. "She's not gone!" I don't care what they said. I know what I felt. I felt her heartbeat. Gabriel's shoes crunched lightly against the gravel as he walked closer. The boy didn't flinch. His shoulders squared, and for a moment, he looked like he was ready to fight a war. Gabriel crouched a few feet away. "Hey," he said gently. "I didn't mean to interrupt." The boy turned his head slightly. "You're not." Gabriel glanced at the headstone. "Leona Carter," it read. No picture, no flowers. Just a birth date and a death date, only 2 weeks apart. "She was your mom?" Gabriel asked. Jalen nodded. "I'm sorry," Gabriel offered, not because it was the polite thing to say, but because it was the only thing that felt true. Jalen looked at him then, really looked, like he was trying to decide if Gabriel was worth the words he was about to spend. Then he asked, "Do you know how to tell if someone's still breathing underground?" Gabriel blinked. "What?" The boy's face stayed calm, but his voice shook slightly. "They said she died in her sleep, that she crashed her car into a tree. But she hated driving at night. She always said, 'If I'm too tired, I'll walk.' And when I asked to see her, they said it was better that I didn't." "Who's they?" Gabriel asked. Jalen's gaze dropped. "The people at Brookvale, where she worked." Gabriel froze. Brookvale. He knew that name. His foundation had donated $500,000 to the elder care facility 3 years ago. A ribbon-cutting photo still hung in his office. "You're saying, you don't think she's dead?" Jalen didn't hesitate. "I don't think. I know." Gabriel exhaled slowly, glancing again at the grave. The earth didn't look settled. It was uneven, clumsily packed. Something about the angle, the texture. "I keep dreaming," Jalen continued. "But it's not dreams, it's like she's trying to talk. I hear her say my name." "I hear her heartbeat. Not like boom boom, like thump thump, real slow. Like she's still under there." Gabriel said nothing. He didn't want to scare the boy with questions he couldn't answer. But something inside him, something long buried, stirred. He thought of his mother's funeral, How cold the church had been. How no one had let him see her, either. Back then, he'd been told to be strong. But strength didn't feel like silence. It felt like suffocation. And now, decades later, this kid was saying what Gabriel had never been brave enough to say out loud. What if they lied? "What's your name?" he asked. "Jalen," the boy answered. "What's yours?" "Gabriel." "You work here?" "No," Gabriel said, pausing. "But maybe I should have." From behind them, an older woman with a watering can approached. Her boots were caked with dirt, and her hands were cracked from weather. She nodded to Gabriel politely, then looked at Jalen with the tired affection of someone who'd seen him often. "He comes every day," she said softly. "Always says the same thing. She didn't die right." Gabriel studied her. "Do you know what happened?" The woman sighed. "Only what the nurses say. Car crash. Quick death. Nothing suspicious." But, she said slowly, they rushed it. No funeral. No flowers, not even a viewing, just a closed file and a new shift schedule. Gabriel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. He looked down at Jalen again. "You said the people at Brookvale wouldn't let you see her?" "They said her face was too messed up." "Was it?" Jalen's voice dropped to a whisper. "No. The cop said there wasn't even a scratch on her body, just bruises on her arms. Like she'd been fighting." Gabriel's throat tightened. "How do you know that?" "I heard them. Through the door." "They didn't know I was there." The wind picked up again, rustling the leaves along the fence line. Gabriel stood and slipped a business card from his wallet. He handed it to Jalen. "This is me. If you ever need to talk, or if you remember anything else, anything at all, you call me." Jalen took the card carefully, like it might break if he gripped it too hard. "You believe me?" he asked. Gabriel met his eyes. "I believe something's wrong, and I don't walk away from wrong." Jalen's fingers curled around the card. "Okay." Gabriel hesitated. "One more question. Why do you keep coming back here?" "Every day?" Jalen stared at the dirt. "Because," he said slowly, "if I stop, then it's like I believe she's really gone, and I don't." Gabriel nodded once. Neither did he. As he walked away, Gabriel didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but he knew where he was going next. Brookvale Elder Care Center. Because something about this story didn't settle, and sometimes the only way to find out the truth was to dig. Not just into the earth, but into the silence people built around the things they didn't want to face. And this time, Gabriel Monroe wasn't going to look away. Gabriel Monroe didn't sleep that night. Not well, anyway. The city lights below his penthouse flickered like a glitch in reality, and the silence of the room didn't soothe him like it usually did. He sat at his dining table, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at his laptop screen. Every logical bone in his body told him to let this go. He wasn't a detective. He wasn't family. And yet that boy's voice, Jalen's voice, kept echoing. "She's still alive." Gabriel tapped his fingers against the keys, then typed in 2 words. Leona Carter. A few vague search results popped up. An obituary on a local funeral home's website. No photo. No service time listed, no mention of next of kin. Just a generic template. Leona Carter, age 34, passed away unexpectedly. She is survived by her son. That was it. No funeral fund. No comment from her workplace. Just an online shrug of a life. He tried Brookvale's website next. Polished. Clinical. Every photo featured smiling staff and happy seniors. He scrolled to the staff directory, but Leona's name wasn't there. Not even in archived versions, like she never worked there at all. That was the first real red flag. At 2:17 a.m., Gabriel picked up his phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Tina," he said when the voice answered groggily. "Gabe. Is everything okay? You still do hospice cases, right?"
Yeah.
she said, her voice sharpening.
Why? I need to ask you about someone. Her name was Leona Carter.
Worked at Brookvale Elder Care until about 2 weeks ago. Car accident. Do you know her? There was a long pause on the other end. Then Tina said, "She didn't deserve what happened to her." Gabriel sat up straighter. "You knew her?" "She called me 2 days before she died," Tina said, voice heavy. "Said something was wrong at the center. Patients being marked DNR without family permission. Said she had a notebook. Said she had names." Gabriel's stomach turned. "And then she just, what? Drove into a tree? That's what they said. I didn't buy it." "She was careful. Always. I knew her when we volunteered together years ago, and she was the kind of woman who double-checked expiration dates on bottled water." Gabriel rubbed his eyes. "Tina, why didn't you tell someone?" "I tried. I called the state licensing board. Left messages. No one called back. And you know who runs the board in this state?" "Let me guess," Gabriel muttered. "Brookvale's chairman." "Walter Price," she said. "And his name is on the funding agreements for Brookvale, the licensing board, and half the care homes in this region." Gabriel leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. "She said she had names," he repeated. "Do you know if she kept anything? She mentioned a notebook." "I don't know what was in it. But if she had it on her, it never made it back to the orphanage. They told her son, Jalen, that she left nothing behind. No purse, no bag. Just her clothes and a single key." "They told him that?" Tina's voice cracked. "He begged to see her. They said she was too damaged. Gabe, if they buried her alive..." Gabriel stood up, heart hammering. "I need that boy's case file. Who placed him? Who signed the report?" "All of it," Tina sighed. "You're really going to chase this?" "Yes," Gabriel said. "I think she was silenced. And I think her son knows more than anyone wants to admit." Tina paused again. "I'll help how I can, but be careful. These people are powerful, connected." Gabriel's voice turned quiet, steel beneath velvet. "So am I." The next morning, Gabriel drove across town to Brookvale. He didn't wear a suit, just jeans, a navy peacoat, and his foundation's baseball cap, an outfit that said, "Concerned Donor," without screaming, "Billionaire." He carried a clipboard under one arm, not because he needed notes, but because people trusted clipboards. The front lobby was pristine. A fake fireplace crackled on a mounted screen. The scent of lavender and lemon wafted through the air, manufactured calm. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm Gabriel Monroe," he said, flashing a neutral badge from his foundation. "We've donated to Brookvale in the past, just doing some quiet audits." "Looking into employee transitions. Would love a moment with your HR head." The smile faltered slightly, but the receptionist nodded. "Let me see if he's available." 10 minutes later, Gabriel was led into a sterile office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a perfectly trimmed courtyard. A man in his 50s stood to greet him. Trim grey hair, expensive tie. Everything about him said, calculated empathy. "I'm James Connolly, HR Director." "You said you're reviewing staff records." "Just doing a sweep," Gabriel said. "Wanted to ask about Leona Carter." Connolly stiffened. "That's unfortunate," he said carefully. "She passed recently, a terrible accident. She was a nurse here?" "Yes, for about 6 years. Quiet, dedicated. Strange there's no mention of her on your staff site. Or in any newsletters. Connolly's smile tightened. We respect privacy in tragedy. Her son was placed in a group home, Gabriel interrupted. Wasn't allowed to see her. Was told there were no personal effects. That's standard when there's a pending investigation. Was there one? Another pause. No. Gabriel leaned forward. So what happened to her belongings? Her notebook? Connolly's voice flattened. I'm not sure what you're implying. Gabriel met his eyes and said nothing. Just waited. Finally, Connolly stood. I think we're done here. Gabriel stood too. We're not, but you're right. It won't be here. He turned to leave, but at the door paused. One last thing, he said. You ever meet a kid who says his mom is still alive, even when she's not? Connolly blinked. No. You will, Gabriel said. And you won't forget him. That night, Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling. He paced his apartment. He called in favors, friends in media, contacts in government, even a private investigator from Chicago. Each conversation pointed to the same thing. Leona Carter had been erased too quickly. Too cleanly. The next morning, Gabriel returned to the cemetery. Jalen was there again, sitting cross-legged in the cold, talking to the headstone like it was a phone line to heaven. You came back, the boy said without looking up. I said I would, Gabriel replied, kneeling beside him. Jalen looked at him carefully. Are you going to help me dig her up? Gabriel's throat went dry. Why would you say that? Because no one else will. And if no one does, then she's going to stay down there forever. And I'll never know if she's cold or just waiting. Gabriel felt something twist in his chest. I'm working on it, he said quietly. But it takes time. Jalen nodded, serious. Okay, but not too much. Why? Because last night, he whispered. I didn't hear her anymore. Gabriel didn't respond. He just reached into his coat and handed Jalen something wrapped in cloth. It was a compass. Sometimes, he said, we don't know where to go, but we still need something to help us feel like we're not lost. Jalen turned it over in his hands, eyes wide. Does it work? Gabriel smiled. Only if you keep believing North exists. The boy slipped it into his pocket, and Gabriel made a silent promise. If no one else would uncover the truth, he would. Even if it meant digging deeper than he ever had. Even if what he found changed everything. The morning after his second visit to the cemetery, Gabriel sat in his sleek downtown office, blinds drawn, his world reduced to the dim blue light of his laptop screen. He wasn't focused on his hedge fund's quarterly projections. He was deep in a tangle of browser tabs, articles, internal health board PDFs, and LinkedIn profiles. He had one goal: to figure out what happened to Leona Carter. Her name appeared in no public health reports. She wasn't listed on any medical board complaints, not even an internal staff memo. But buried 3 pages deep in a forgotten city procurement audit, he found a reference to a now-defunct program, Brookvale Rapid Transition Protocol, Phase 2. The description was vague, something about reducing the strain on long-term facilities by expediting terminal patient care. The dates matched the week Leona died. Gabriel pushed back from his desk, heart thudding. He grabbed his phone and dialed Tina Morales. Do you remember hearing about something called Phase 2 at Brookvale? He asked. Silence. Then Tina said, Yeah. But it wasn't public. A few of us overheard. They'd talk about clearing beds when the census got tight. People just disappeared faster. Leona mentioned it. She was scared. Gabriel pinched the bridge of his nose. Do you think she was trying to blow the whistle? She said she had names, Evidence. She was going to send it to a journalist at the Tribune, but after she died, nothing ever came out. I figured she got scared and backed down. Or someone made sure she never sent it. That landed heavy. Tina hesitated. Gabriel, if she had all this and someone wanted it buried, they probably wouldn't have stopped at deleting a few files. Gabriel thought of Jalen. Alone. Waiting. Whispering to the ground. She's still alive. No, Gabriel thought now. She wasn't. But she had fought. And that mattered. Later that day, he drove to the Tribune's downtown office. It wasn't what it used to be, just a few floors in a shared building now, but the archives were intact, and he had a name, Phoebe Lawton, a reporter who'd once written a piece on end-of-life care malpractice. He waited an hour in the lobby before she came down to meet him. Sharp suit, shrewd eyes. She didn't offer a handshake. You're Gabriel Monroe, she said, and you're hard to find. I prefer it that way. What do you want? Leona Carter, Brookvale. I think she tried to contact you. Phoebe blinked once, slowly. Come with me. They sat in the cafe next door, a forgotten booth in the back. Phoebe pulled a leather-bound notebook from her bag and flipped through it until she stopped at a post-it note. I never met her. But I got this about 2 weeks before her death. A burner number. No name. Just, they're accelerating patients without consent. Look into Brookvale Phase 2. Then she went silent. You never followed up? I tried. The number was dead. And when I reached out to Brookvale, they said they'd never heard of her. I couldn't confirm anything, and I was already sitting on 2 leads that went nowhere. No editor wants a maybe. Gabriel leaned in. What if I could give you more than maybe? Phoebe studied him for a beat. Then you need to show me something. Not theories. Proof. I'm working on it. Then work fast. Brookvale's part of a major investment roll-up next quarter. They're going public through a shell company. If this explodes after that, someone's walking away with hundreds of millions. If it explodes before, they drown in it. She nodded. They exchanged numbers. Before she left, she said, If this is what I think it is, you're going to piss off people with very deep pockets. Gabriel didn't flinch. Let them come. That night, under the haze of street lamps and winter fog, Gabriel drove back to the group home. It was the kind of building that looked exhausted, paint peeling, porch slumped like shoulders hunched against the cold. He rang the doorbell and waited. The woman who answered, Mrs. Kelly, had the hardened softness of someone who'd been underpaid for 2 decades, but still cared. Can I speak with Jalen? He asked. Just for a few minutes. Her eyes narrowed. You're not family. No, but I'm trying to help him find the truth about his mother. She hesitated, then called down the hall. Jalen, the man from the cemetery is here. The boy padded out in socks, hoodie sleeves pulled over his hands. His eyes lit up when he saw Gabriel. Did you find anything? I did, Gabriel said gently. Can we talk? They sat on the steps outside, wrapped in mismatched blankets. Gabriel explained slowly about Brookvale, the pattern of deaths, the possibility that Leona knew too much. Jalen didn't interrupt. Just listened, knees pulled to his chest. Everyone acts like I'm crazy, the boy said finally. But I knew something was wrong. She didn't say goodbye. Not really. She always said goodbye. Gabriel's throat tightened. She had a notebook, Jalen continued. She hid it in a drawer under the sink, in a cereal box. Said if anything happened, I should tell someone. Gabriel blinked. Is it still there? The boy shook his head. After they said she died, some people came to the apartment.
Said they were there to clean it. I told them about the box, but when I checked later, it was gone. Gabriel clenched his fists. But, Jalen added, I remember some of what was in it. She made me read it to her when she was tired, said I had a good voice. Gabriel stared. You remember it? Some names. Dates. She said if I remembered the patterns, maybe someone would believe me. Gabriel reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. Will you help me write them down? Jalen nodded slowly. They stayed on the steps for an hour, a boy recalling pages of names and numbers with the clarity only trauma and purpose confused together. Gabriel wrote everything. When they finished, Jalen looked up at him. Are we going to stop them? Gabriel smiled, weary but firm. No. We're going to expose them. And somewhere beneath the weight of city lights and buried truths, the first real crack in the silence opened wide. And it would not be closed again. The following morning, Gabriel sat in the leather chair of his home office, watching the sunlight edge its way across the oak floor. On his desk lay the transcribed notes from Jalen, handwritten names, dates, times, all tied to patient cases and strange code phrases. Most chilling of all was the recurring line Leona had apparently written over and over. Accelerated comfort is not consent. Gabriel took a deep breath and tapped his fingers against his temple. Each new name had to be traced, verified, connected. It was going to take more than memory and gut instinct now. He needed data, internal records, whistleblowers. He needed someone inside. He thought of the name Jalen had repeated the most. She kept mentioning someone named Dr. Berman, Jalen had said. She didn't trust him, said he smiled too wide. Gabriel opened a new browser window and searched. Dr. Stephen Berman plus Brookvale plus palliative program. What came up surprised him. Berman wasn't just a staff doctor. He was listed as Brookvale's chief clinical ethicist, the man responsible for oversight on end-of-life decisions, DNR orders, and patient transition protocols. Ethicist. The word curdled in Gabriel's mouth. He scrolled further and found a photo. Salt and pepper hair, polished glasses, a firm grin. He looked like someone who gave lectures on medical morality, not someone orchestrating silent deaths. Gabriel stared at the face for a long beat before picking up his phone. Phoebe. I have a name. Berman, the journalist exhaled. I know the name. He's spoken at Harvard Med. NIH panels. He's untouchable on paper. But what if he isn't off paper? Gabriel said. What if I can get you a copy of internal records? Something buried in Brookvale's system. She paused. Do you have access? No, Gabriel replied. But I know someone who might. Later that afternoon, Gabriel pulled into a quiet parking lot behind a worn-down community clinic on the south side. The sign over the door had faded to the point of illegibility, but inside, the air was filled with quiet tension and the antiseptic scent of budget constraints. Camille Warren met him in a side hallway. She was in her late 30s, braided hair tied back, wearing navy scrubs and sneakers that had seen better days. You better not be wasting my time, she said flatly. I wouldn't have come if I didn't need help, Gabriel replied. Camille narrowed her eyes. Last time I saw you, you were still pretending the world didn't exist past Lincoln Park. Gabriel gave a small smile. I've had a wake-up call. That boy, right? Jalen. You think he's telling the truth? I don't just think it, I know it. Camille crossed her arms. So what do you need? You interned at Brookvale, right? 3 years ago. She nodded, guarded. Only for 4 months. Couldn't stomach it longer. Do you remember a nurse named Leona Carter? Camille blinked. Yeah, quiet, real sharp. I watched her stand up to a physician assistant who was cutting corners on meds. Most of the staff avoided her because she didn't play along. "She's gone," Gabriel said quietly. "They claimed it was a car accident. But the more I dig, the more it smells wrong. I have her notes. I have a timeline. But I need access. Emails, internal logs, anything that shows what Berman and his people were doing with this Phase 2 protocol." Camille's gaze shifted. "You want me to hack the system? I want you to log in the way you used to. Old credentials." "Just to see if anything's still there." Camille chewed the inside of her cheek. "Even if I could, those files would be scrubbed." "What if they missed something?" Gabriel said. "A ghost file." "A backup server. We just need one mistake, one crack." Camille hesitated. "Give me a night." Back at home, Gabriel sat at his desk again, staring at the sketch Jalen had drawn of his mother. A woman with gentle eyes, a half smile, and a necklace with a small cross. He thought of his own mother, who died of lymphoma when he was 14. The pain had shaped him but never defined him. Jalen, on the other hand, had been shaped, scarred, and then abandoned in a way that Gabriel couldn't shake. The past was no longer a weight he could ignore. It was here, demanding attention. A text pinged at midnight. "Camille. Found something. Need to meet. Now." They reconvened at the clinic. Camille brought a flash drive in a plain manila envelope. Her expression was unreadable. "I found a buried folder in an old admin mailbox." It wasn't labeled clearly, but it's all there. Emails, notes. Even a few audio memos from Dr. Berman's assistant. He was dictating his observations. Gabriel plugged in the drive and opened the first audio file. A male voice spoke calmly. "Patient, Fontaine 56, Claire Holmes. Family unreachable. No objection to accelerated protocol. Vital signs consistent with pre-transition phase. Proceeding per Phase 2 standards." There was no emotion in his voice, no humanity. Camille leaned against the wall, arms folded. "There are 24 files like that. 24. Gabriel's mouth went dry. "This is more than negligence," she said. "It's systemic." Gabriel closed the laptop. "It's murder." The next day, Gabriel and Phoebe met in an underground parking garage, away from any prying eyes. He handed over the flash drive without ceremony. "This goes to press?" he asked. Phoebe nodded. "Full spread. I'll need a quote, and we'll blur Jalen's identity." "He's been through enough." Gabriel hesitated, then said, "Make the story about her, Leona. She was the one who fought first." Phoebe smiled faintly. "She'll be known, I promise." As they parted, Gabriel glanced toward the sky. It was overcast, the kind of grey that made buildings look softer and the world quieter. But something in him had shifted. The truth was no longer buried. And if those responsible thought they could outlast it, they hadn't reckoned with a boy who never stopped believing, and a man who finally chose to listen. Gabriel couldn't sleep. The files Camille recovered kept echoing in his mind like ghosts. Each name was a person. Each person had a family who probably believed the lies. He lay in the dark, listening to the wind rattle against the window pane and thinking of how quiet death could be when no one was listening. At sunrise, he sat at the dining table, bleary-eyed but resolute. Jalen emerged from the guest room in mismatched pajamas, rubbing his eyes. He didn't speak at first, just looked at Gabriel, then at the empty coffee mug on the table. "She fought back, didn't she?" Jalen asked, like he'd known all along. Gabriel nodded. "She did." Until the very end. Jalen sat beside him, folding his legs up under himself on the chair. "Then I want them to know who she was, not just what they did to her. I want her face on the news, her smile, The way she hummed "Lean on Me" while she cooked. Gabriel turned to him slowly.
I can promise that, but it'll mean the world knowing your story too. I'm not scared of them anymore, Jalen said, and Gabriel believed him.
Later that morning, Phoebe sent a text. "It's running tonight, 8 p.m., prime time." Gabriel turned to Jalen. "You ready for this?" Jalen didn't answer with words. He went into the living room, pulled a framed photo of his mother from his backpack, one of the few things he still had, and placed it beside the TV. That evening, the news segment opened with Phoebe's voiceover. What began as a child's quiet grief at a forgotten grave has now become a statewide investigation. Leona Carter, a nurse at Brookvale Rest and Recovery, was declared dead after a reported car accident. But documents, emails, and audio recordings reveal a chilling truth. They played a short clip from one of Berman's audio files. Jalen flinched. Gabriel instinctively reached over, resting a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "This wasn't just medical malpractice," Phoebe continued.
It was a systemic program designed to expedite death for certain patients, and one woman, a single mother and nurse, risked everything to stop it. The screen flashed images, Leona in scrubs, smiling, her handwriting from the recovered notebook, Camille's metadata records, even the sketch Jalen had drawn of his mother under a tree. Jalen whispered, "She's here." And for the first time since meeting the boy, Gabriel saw something in his eyes other than grief. Recognition. Vindication. A spark of peace. The backlash was instant. By morning, Brookvale's phone lines were flooded. Families demanded information. Lawyers sent letters. The State Board of Health launched an emergency inquiry, and by noon, the CEO of Brookvale had released a carefully worded statement about temporary suspension of staff pending a full internal review. But Gabriel knew better than to celebrate too early. The real fight hadn't even begun. At midday, Phoebe called. "You've started a storm, but now they're circling the wagons." Gabriel stepped onto the balcony, the wind tousling his hair. "Meaning what?" "Meaning Berman lawyered up. And someone's leaking a counter-narrative." She paused. "They're framing her, Gabriel." "Leona, saying she was emotionally unstable, that her notes show signs of paranoid delusions." Gabriel's stomach turned. "That's the game now," she continued. "Discredit the dead, undermine the living." Gabriel clenched his jaw. "Then we get louder." That evening, Gabriel called an old contact, Sarah Myers, a civil rights attorney who'd once taken on an entire hospital network over discriminatory care practices. They hadn't spoken in years, but she answered on the second ring. "Gabriel Montgomery. I thought you forgot about the rest of us. I need your help." He told her everything. The files. The child. The nurse who tried to speak up. When he finished, there was silence. Then, "I'll be on the next flight." "And I'm bringing 2 associates." He closed his eyes, letting the gravity of her words settle in. They had a legal team. They had the press. They had the truth. Now, they needed the moment. Gabriel spent the next 2 days organizing a town hall. They held it in a converted church gymnasium on the south side, the same neighborhood Leona had lived in, and the same place her death had never been questioned. By the time the meeting started, the bleachers were full. Nurses in scrubs. Grieving families, curious residents, even a few faces from Brookvale who sat in the back, eyes hard and arms crossed. Gabriel stood at the center of the room, not behind a podium, but among the crowd. "We're not here to mourn. We're here to listen." And then to act. He turned and gestured toward the projection screen behind him. A photo of Leona filled the wall. She was a nurse. A mother.
A woman who noticed something wrong and did what people say they want others to do. She spoke up. Then he turned to the crowd.
And for that, they buried her. Murmurs. Tension. He continued.
But she wasn't alone, and she's not voiceless anymore. He looked toward the back, where Jalen sat between Camille and Phoebe. He nodded at the boy, inviting him forward. The room stilled. Jalen stepped slowly to the front. He wasn't polished. He didn't smile for the cameras. He stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, his voice trembling but clear. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't sad. She was brave. He paused. She told me people matter. Even when nobody's watching. And then he said the words that made every heart in the room crack wide open. They buried her like a mistake. But I remembered. And now you do too. Silence. Then applause. Then tears. The town had heard her now, and there was no unhearing it. Outside, as the crowd filtered into the night, a woman approached Gabriel. She was in her late 50s, eyes tired but alert. "My mother died at Brookvale 2 years ago," she said. "They said it was a stroke. But I remember something felt wrong. She was fine the week before." Gabriel gently handed her one of the flyers they'd printed. "Talk to Sarah," he said. "Let's find out the truth together." That night, Gabriel and Jalen returned home to find a letter slid under the door. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Stop digging." "You don't know what you're playing with." Jalen stared at it. Gabriel folded the paper and set it in the fireplace, watched it curl and blacken to ash. Then he looked at Jalen and said, "Now we know they're scared." Gabriel sat at the kitchen table, hands folded tightly, the crumpled letter still faintly smoldering in the fireplace behind him. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of traffic beyond the window. Across from him, Jalen stared at a page from his sketchbook, pencil hovering over half-finished shapes. His face was still, but his eyes carried the weight of everything unsaid. "You okay?" Gabriel finally asked. Jalen didn't answer at first. Then he said, "They want you to stop." Gabriel leaned back in his chair. "That's how you know you're close to something that matters." Outside, the wind rattled the front gate. Somewhere in the distance, sirens passed by but didn't slow. The world kept turning like it didn't notice what they were trying to uncover. But Gabriel felt it now, like pressure rising underground, waiting for a crack. A sharp knock at the door made both of them jump. Gabriel stood crossing the room with cautious steps. He checked the peephole, then opened the door slowly. Sarah Myers stood on the porch, coat soaked from rain, 2 files in one hand, her phone in the other. "We've got a problem," she said, stepping inside without waiting for invitation. Gabriel closed the door behind her. "Tell me." She dropped the files on the table and flipped one open. "One of the staff nurses from Brookvale came forward last night. Name's Tanya Green. She worked the night shift with Leona. She saw Leona's final report before it disappeared." Jalen's eyes lifted. "She saw it?" Sarah nodded. "But this morning Tanya was found unconscious in her apartment, pills on the counter, a supposed suicide note typed, not handwritten." Gabriel's face hardened. "She's alive?" "Barely," Sarah said, "but she's at St. James under guard. They're claiming overdose, but the toxicology doesn't line up. Whatever she took, if she took anything, wasn't in her system." Gabriel exhaled slowly. "So now they're trying to take out the witnesses." "They're scared," Sarah said. "Because Tanya confirmed what we suspected. Leona's final report listed 5 names of patients marked DNR without consent. One of them had a surviving son who never authorized anything.
Jalen's voice was quiet. What happens now? Gabriel turned to him. Now we stop playing defense. That night they gathered in Gabriel's office, now a makeshift war room. Camille had mapped out timelines on the walls, linking files and witness names, photos, notes, Leona's original observations, the forged DNR forms, Tanya's preliminary statement, printed and highlighted. This is no longer a single case, Camille said. It's a pattern.
It's policy, and someone needs to burn for it. Gabriel looked over the evidence. Walter Kessler, CEO of Brookvale. Sarah frowned. Too easy. He signed the orders, but someone beneath him implemented it. That means complicity in multiple layers, administrators, records officers, possibly even physicians. Camille zoomed in on one document. There's a name that keeps popping up, Dr. Leonard Caro. Jalen, who had been silent, looked up. My mom mentioned him once, said he always had empty eyes. Gabriel walked to the window, jaw tight. Caro's listed as the attending physician on 3 of the questionable deaths. All signed off within 30 minutes of each other. No autopsies, no family outreach. Sarah looked down at her phone. Then we go public again, with names. Camille hesitated. That's dangerous. We're past that, Gabriel said. The next day, Gabriel stood outside the courthouse with Phoebe, Sarah, and Camille. The press had gathered again, more this time. Local outlets, a couple national faces, mics raised like weapons. This is not about revenge, Gabriel said into the microphones. This is about justice, for Leona Carter, for every patient who deserved dignity, and for a boy who kept telling us what we refused to hear. He read the list of names aloud, Kessler, Caro, Berman, and others they had documented. With each name he held up a form, a statement, a photo. Phoebe stepped forward next. We're calling on the Department of Justice to open a formal investigation into systemic elder abuse, medical fraud, and obstruction of justice at Brookvale and its affiliates. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters shouted questions. What do you say to those claiming this is political? Gabriel stepped back to the mic. They can call it whatever they want, but what they can't ignore anymore is the truth. That evening, while Camille and Sarah fielded calls from investigators and whistleblowers, Gabriel and Jalen sat quietly on the back porch. Jalen held a copy of the press release in one hand, a sketch in the other. It was a picture of his mother, sitting under a tree, smiling, not the version everyone else saw in blurry ID photos, but the one he remembered. I think she'd be proud, he said. Gabriel smiled. I know she is. But just as the moment settled, Camille rushed out, phone in hand, face pale. They're issuing a gag order, she said. Brookvale's lawyers are going for a court injunction to silence all parties involved until further notice. Gabriel stood slowly. They're trying to shut us up. Sarah followed behind her, eyes blazing. And they're failing. I've already filed the challenge, but they're playing for time. Hoping media interest dies down. Jalen looked between them. Gabriel kneeled beside him. Tomorrow we speak louder. And as the wind picked up again, rustling the trees like a warning, they prepared to do just that. The courthouse buzzed like a wasp's nest. Media trucks lined the sidewalk, their satellite dishes extended like antennas searching for blood. Inside, the polished marble floor of the rotunda reflected heels and suits, tension and posture. It wasn't just a court proceeding anymore. It was a reckoning, and everyone present could feel it, even if they wouldn't admit it out loud. Gabriel Brooks sat on the wooden bench outside courtroom 4B, elbows on knees, hands clasped. He hadn't worn a tie. The press would talk about that. Let them. He didn't come to be palatable. He came to be undeniable, Next to him, Jalen sat stiff, small fists balled into his lap. His oversized blazer, a hand-me-down from Gabriel's Foundation Gala collection, swallowed his shoulders. But his eyes were sharp, focused, unblinking. "They're going to try and tear her apart," Gabriel said softly. Jalen nodded. "But they can't rewrite what she was." The heavy courtroom doors creaked open. A clerk called out, "State of California versus Brookvale Health Systems, preliminary hearing." Inside, it smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. Walter Kessler sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, skin pale against the stark lighting. His lawyers flanked him, expensive and emotionless. On the other side, Assistant DA Rebecca Cho stood with a folder so thick it looked like it belonged in an archive. The judge, a middle-aged woman with crow's feet that had clearly seen too many last-minute settlements, leaned forward. "Let's begin." Rebecca's opening remarks were precise. No outrage, just facts. Too many patients dying without contact to family, DNRs filed with no consent, a pattern across multiple facilities sealed under administrative loopholes. Then came the twist. "We're submitting a video deposition," she said, "taken 2 nights ago from Tanya Green, former night nurse at Brookvale East." Gasps rippled. Even Kessler's attorneys shifted. The screen lowered. Tanya appeared, pale and hospital-gowned, but her voice was firm. "I was told to stop asking questions about Leona Carter. I was told that she'd been dealt with. That's the phrase, dealt with. I saw her report. I saw the 5 names on it. I saw Dr. Caro's initials, and the next day, I was nearly dead too." Silence fell like a dropped stone. Kessler's lead attorney stood. "Objection! Unverified! Speculative! Overruled!" the judge snapped. "You'll have time to rebut, but this testimony stays." The judge's gaze turned toward the gallery. "Mr. Brooks, I understand you have something further?" Gabriel stood. The room didn't move. He stepped forward, unfolded a paper from his coat pocket. "This is a scanned copy of Leona Carter's original handwritten report, preserved by her former colleague, Camille Rivera, who had the foresight to keep backups in multiple locations. The report was sent to Brookvale's HR office 3 days before her death. It was never logged, never filed. And now we know why." He turned to the audience, then back to the judge. "I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a politician. I'm a man who once sat in the back row of a courtroom like this when no one believed the child speaking. I won't let that happen again." He turned to Kessler. "You thought you could bury her, but what you buried was the evidence." The court erupted. Reporters scrambled. Kessler muttered something to his lawyer, who leaned in, visibly panicked. Outside the courtroom, the storm had only begun. That night, back at Gabriel's house, the air was quieter. But inside the living room, the tension hummed like an old song. Jalen sat on the couch flipping through a photo album Camille had recovered from Leona's storage unit. Birthday hats. Nurse badges. Pictures of Jalen asleep on her chest. "I thought there'd be more," he said. Camille looked over. "This is more than some people ever get." "She looks so happy," Jalen whispered. Even though they were watching her." "She wasn't happy about them," Camille said. "She was happy about you." Gabriel entered with 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to Jalen, sat on the coffee table. "Tomorrow, they'll try to spin it. Say we're smearing a respected company. Say we're blowing up a procedural miscommunication." "What if they believe them?" Jalen asked. Gabriel looked him square in the eyes. "We don't need everyone to believe us. We just need the right people to believe the truth." Jalen nodded slowly. Then, for the first time since the graveyard, he asked, "Can I say something tomorrow?" Gabriel blinked. You want to testify? No, Jalen said. Not in court. I want to speak at the press conference. I want to tell them what it felt like. Camille looked up. Are you sure? I'm not, he admitted. But I think that's how I know it matters. Gabriel reached forward and squeezed the boy's hand. Then we'll stand beside you when you do. The next day, the press conference was packed. More than 100 people, some from town, some from cities far away. Advocates, victims' families, curious skeptics, cynical bloggers. Gabriel approached the podium first. You've heard from the attorneys, from the experts. Today you'll hear from the reason we started this. He stepped back. Jalen climbed up, his blazer still too big, but his voice steady. My name is Jalen Carter, he said. I'm 10 years old. My mom was Leona Carter. He paused, took a breath. They told me she died in a car accident. But I knew something was wrong. I told people. They said I was grieving. That I didn't understand. But I did. I understood that when someone doesn't get to say goodbye, it feels like they've been erased. He lifted a folded drawing and held it up. This is a picture of what I dreamed. Her hands were still reaching for me. She was still calling. Silence fell again. But now, he said, I'm not just dreaming. I'm remembering, and I'm speaking. Because maybe the only way to keep someone from disappearing forever is to speak their name loud enough for the world to hear it. Leona Carter, my mom. She didn't die quietly. And now, neither will the truth. The applause didn't come immediately. It built slowly, earnestly. And when it came, it wasn't just clapping. It was a kind of thunder that meant the tide had turned. Gabriel wiped his eyes and whispered, You did it. Jalen looked up, his voice quiet. We did it. The courtroom was quiet when the verdict came down, too quiet for what it meant. No cheers. No gasps. Just the kind of silence that fell like a breath finally exhaled after years of holding it in. Walter Kessler sat motionless, his face slack, the sentence echoing around him like a bell tolling far too late. 25 years. No parole for the first 15. Additional charges pending in the deaths of 3 other patients whose families had joined the suit after Jalen's press conference sparked a wave of testimony. It wasn't just a conviction. It was a ripple through the system that had once protected men like Kessler. This time, the truth hadn't been buried. This time, it had clawed its way out. Outside the courthouse, the media gathered in a semicircle, recording every angle of a day no one expected to happen. Gabriel stepped out into the sunlight first, the warmth hitting him like something earned. He didn't speak right away. Jalen followed, his hand wrapped around Gabriel's. He wore the same blazer. It still didn't quite fit, but his posture had changed. Straighter, steadier. Then Camille. Then Officer Nguyen. Then Camille's cousin, a nurse who had come forward after seeing Leona's name on the news. They were no longer just witnesses. They were a wall, unshakable. A reporter raised a mic. Mr. Brooks, do you feel justice has been served? Gabriel paused. Justice doesn't undo what was done. It doesn't bring people back, but it does tell the truth out loud, and sometimes that's where healing starts. Another hand shot up. What's next? He looked down at Jalen. The boy met his gaze, then nodded. Gabriel turned back. We build something better. 2 months later, the Brookvale Foundation announced its restructuring. Every senior executive named in the whistleblower investigation was gone, replaced by a panel of advocates, nurses and families of victims, policies rewritten, protections put in place. Transparency promised, and this time enforced by law. Leona Carter's name was etched onto a new plaque at the front entrance, for those who cared enough to speak and those who were brave enough to listen. In a quiet neighborhood in Oakland, a tree swing creaked in the afternoon breeze. Jalen sat on it with a sketchbook in his lap, legs dangling, eyes focused. He was drawing a hospital hallway, but brighter, filled with windows, color, light. In one corner, a woman in scrubs with a soft smile. Gabriel walked out with 2 cups of lemonade.
"You've been out here a while." Jalen didn't look up. "Just finishing this one." Gabriel sat beside him on the porch steps. "You know, you're different now." "How?" "You carry things differently."
"Like you know where to put the heavy parts." Jalen smiled. "I guess I do." There was a pause. Then Jalen flipped the page and showed him the drawing. "I'm thinking of turning this into a mural for the new patient advocacy center they're building. They said they'd name it after her." Gabriel stared at the image. His throat tightened. "She would have loved this," he said quietly. "I think she knows." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jalen asked, "Do you ever wonder why it had to happen like this?" Gabriel thought for a moment.
"I used to, but maybe some truths need to break the world open first, just enough for something better to grow." Jalen nodded, like flowers pushing through concrete. "Exactly." That night, they visited the cemetery. No press, no ceremony, just a boy and a man and a headstone now properly cared for. Flowers were already there. Someone anonymous had left them. White lilies, Leona's favorite. Jalen kneeled and whispered something that Gabriel didn't try to hear. Then he stood, brushing the dirt off his knees. "She's quiet now," he said. Gabriel looked at him. "You mean in your dreams?" "No, just here." Like she knows she was finally heard. 3 weeks later, the video of Jalen's speech at the press conference hit 10 million views. Schools reached out to use it in civics education. A senator cited it in her proposal for elder care reform. Other children came forward. Other parents who were afraid to ask too many questions began asking anyway. And somewhere, in a place not too far from where this all started, someone whispered a name at a gravestone and knew finally that it wasn't just the wind listening. If you were moved by this story, don't let it stop here. Share it. Talk about it. Think about who's been silenced in your own community. Because sometimes the truth is buried not by dirt, but by doubt. And when one voice dares to rise, it helps others follow. Leona Carter never screamed. She simply held on. And now, her story holds us all a little stronger. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because these stories matter. And when we tell them together, we don't just change lives. We honor them. We'll see you in the next one.